Hello, my name is Iona Rossely, and if you don't know me, that's fine. You can buy my autobiography called Racing on Empty. If you want to laugh, if you want to cry, you want to go on a roller coaster journey, that's how you get to know me, reading the book. But I'm not here to talk about myself. I have been so blessed to meet many, many incredible, brilliant people in my life, from pastors, leaders, innovators, incredible athletes. I thought it would be a really good idea to interview some of these amazing people just to find out what makes them tick. And I know most of them have profound wisdom and knowledge that we'd all love to hear. And I reckon I can unearth some real treasures that would benefit all of us. Now, I thought I'd start, we've already started, with Anton Cuyler, who is the CEO of the Sozo Foundation. And you may ask, who is the Sozo Foundation? Who are they? Well, the royalties of my book go to the Sozo Foundation in Cape Town. And I thought we would start with Anton, who's a very dear friend, an incredible, incredible man. And you'll see from the interview, he talks about why he set up this foundation. He also talks about giving advice to people who would like to do a bit more in this world. And the way he describes the values, the principles, and the gifts that we need to have. And that's open for all of us. If we have a passion to do something different, then this is an interview you need to watch. Anton has this fire in his stomach that is contagious, I would say. And I actually learned so much from the interview. And it's an incredible watch, and he's such a compassionate, kind, and loving guy. And what they've done in the Sozo Foundation is incredible and amazing. So please watch it, share it with your friend. If you want to know more, just go on to ionarossely.com website. And it would be just very interesting also to get your feedback on this. But we will be interviewing other amazing people, but we started with Anton. It's a very deep interview, but it's a good one. It's one that will, I hope, would really bless all of you. So thank you, and watch and enjoy. Hi, it's Iona here, and today I've got the most amazing privilege of introducing a very good friend of mine, Anton Cuyler, who runs, or he's the CEO of the Sozo Foundation in Cape Town. So Anton, for those people watching, we'd just love to know a little bit about who you are. Who is Anton? Where you come from, your family, children, where you're based now, just a little bit about your story.
Yes, hi, Iona, and thank you for the opportunity. Lovely to see you again and connect with you, even though we're miles and miles apart. In these strange times, we can still connect. So thank God for technology. Who I am, I'm a South African born white male Afrikaans boy. Grew up, I was born in the very center point of the apartheid 40-year regime. So I was born in 74. The end of apartheid was 94. So I grew up in the midst of the shift and the change, and I saw all of that sort of happening and unfolding in my life as a youngster, not quite understanding what this is all about. Why am I going to an all-white school? Why am I going to an all-white town? Why am I going to an all-white cinema? Why do I not know any person of color? Why are those people living on the other side of the veldt? Why is everybody so scared of them? Why, if they come into our homes and clean our homes, and I grew up with them nurturing me and raising me, I don't understand, quite confusing. When I was 16 years old, I got a part-time job at a local supermarket retailer. And I met my first friend in my whole life of color. It was a young Zulu boy named Patrick. and we just got on like a house on fire, you know.
Brilliant.
We were fantastic friends,
Mm.
and he taught me some Zulu, and we hung out every day together, had lunch together. I was reprimanded a few times for being in the non-white canteen, and I should be upstairs with the management canteen, although I was just a shelf packer. So I didn't understand these things, you know, and I saw it unfolding in my early 20s. We saw the first democratic election come to light, and it was a time when South Africa was very volatile, and it was a time when I had started asking a lot of questions for myself.
Mm.
I studied in Johannesburg at the University of Johannesburg. I studied a marketing and logistics bachelor's, and I got a job through a large firm that I had a bursary with, and so I walked into a job. I had real privilege experience of being able to go and study and being able to get a job right off the cuff of that. But I yearned to see a bit more of the world. I'd never traveled before. And in that experience, I had won a prize, which was a sales team prize, which was a trip to America on a luxury cruise liner.
Wow.
And that was my first, yeah, it was fantastic. I was about 24 and won this trip, and my first time flying, my first time going abroad, my first time seeing the rest of the world. Because, you know, as a youngster, you grew up in apartheid era, very much shut off from the rest of the world with all the sanctions and boycotts and everything. You know, the world wasn't something that you considered a destination. You know, it was all just in South Africa. And so my eyes really the scales fell off my eyes on this trip. I just realized, wow, there's another world out here, you know, and actually it's fascinating and interesting. So I think that's where the travel bug really started getting me. And it didn't take long. About 18 months later, I made the decision to resign and go to the UK. On a working holiday visa, and the company I was working for at that time, South African Breweries, had offered me then, as I'd made up my mind, they offered me the opportunity to go and work for them in London.
Wow.
So again, I was really privileged, really blessed to be able, I say the word blessed now, at that time I didn't think I was blessed. I just thought I was, you know, the luckiest guy in the world, because I hadn't met Jesus yet. I knew all about Jesus because I grew up in the traditional church, but I hadn't really had an encounter of meeting Jesus face to face and entering in a relationship. And so for me, it was a case of going to the UK and living the life, so to speak, you know. I met a South African girl out in London, Iona, from the Free State, the Orange Free State. She went to the UK a day apart from me, and we met a year later. We both got engaged the year after. We got saved the year after, and we got married the year after.
I didn't realize that you met in London. I didn't realize that.
Yes, no, we did. It was quite amazing circumstances as well. So with that encounter of us being saved, and you know, when I say that, you know, we grew up as Christians, we have Christian families, but neither of us had ever made that commitment to follow Christ. And that was a really transformational experience for us when that happened, and it changed the direction of our lives completely, you know, and we knew everything would change from that point on.
That when you decided to go back to South Africa, or did you?
No, that was still early days. That was during our third year in London. we ended up spending 10 years in London.
Wow.
And so the next 7 years would be a real kind of preparation journey for us. It's where we discovered our passion for youth and young people and youth development and youth ministry, through a local community church in Essex in the UK, where we found our home, our spiritual home, and a beautiful place of grace that really looked after us and helped us grow and navigate and being discipled as young Christians. We didn't have children. We didn't have a desire for children, for quite a period of time. After we were married for 10 years before we felt that we wanted, to embark on life as explore the possibility of becoming parents. But during that time, we engaged with a lot of youth trips and youth ministry trips, etc. And it was during one of those trips, youth camps, that I felt God speak to me very clearly about going back to South Africa, and that was in 2008, and the Lord spoke to me clearly, saying that we should leave everything behind, sell everything, leave nothing behind. Take nothing, leave nothing behind, take everything with you, and go. Very much that call of Abraham, go to the land which I will show you. And we didn't know where in Africa. The call was just go back to Africa. We didn't know where or what. We were willing, ready, zealous, to go and do anywhere. That crazy prayer of send me, Lord, wherever, whenever, whatever. That was our heart. We were young and zealous. We had no commitments, and so we could easily go anywhere.
You were obedient.
We were sold out. Yes, we were sold out for anything, anywhere, and through various words and various confirmations, through the simplicity of reading a South African newspaper with the front page having this article about a little place called Muizenberg in Cape Town, I felt the Lord say that's where you're gonna live. We'd never been there before in our lives. We're from the Highveld, from the Gauteng, and from the Free State, so we don't know the Cape, but we knew that's where we're going to stay. So we bought a house off the internet, as one does. And again, these sort of things really freaked our parents out. But for us, it was simple. It was really easy. God, I think for when God calls people, when people say, this is a calling, God called me, it's more scary for those who are looking on or hearing or seeing or experiencing it from the sideline. For you, when you are being called by God, it's simple, because you hear the voice of God and he makes things so easy, and that's the grace of God.
And he opens the doors for you, and I think you guys walk in his presence. So as you walk in his presence, you're assured, you're protected.
Yes.
And it's that straight road, isn't it? The doors are closed.
Absolutely.
You're wandering off, and
yeah, absolutely. It's I often draw the comparison that when God spoke to us at that time, calling us, it was such a clear call as the day God called us into his kingdom, into salvation. It was so clear. So I knew the day I got saved, I would never be able to walk away from this, because I've now found and discovered the truth. And if I knew I could choose to walk away, but I also knew that the consequence would be that I would have to live in the knowledge of a lie. My life would be a lie, because I've discovered the truth. And it was interesting, because the church we got saved in was meeting in Mile End Road in East London, on Mile End Road, where all the curry shops are. And there was a cinema there, very famous. I don't know if you've been there to Mile End Road in East London. It's a famous road, and great curries. But that's for another time.
Isn't that the British national dish? Is
Absolutely, exactly. And Mile End Road is the capital of the British national dish, curry. Absolutely. And they were meeting in a cinema, and the cinema, as we left the cinema, and we were sobbing and crying because we'd really been touched by the Lord, and we had been just asking forgiveness to our friends who we thought were bonkers for going to church and getting baptized and everything. And we just happened to go this one Sunday to check up on them. And as we left this church after we'd been saved, I looked back and I saw this name of the cinema was called Genesis Cinema. Wow. And I felt the first time in my life, I felt what it means to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit. As I looked through the window, sobbing and crying, I saw Genesis, and I felt the Holy Spirit say, "This is the beginning."
Yeah.
You know, and so when God called us to come back to Africa, we were, and it showed us you're going to live in Muizenberg. Buying a house off the internet becomes just a functional next step. You know, it's not a big step of faith really, because God has called you, and then you commit to obedience, and whatever that comes with, you just roll with that, you know, and it becomes exciting and an adventure.
So how did you link in with Bay City Community Church and Sheldon and Kathleen?
Yeah, lovely. We knew where we were going to live. That was clear, Muizenberg. So we thought to ourselves logically, and let me say this also for those who listen to parts of this, and I want to give wise counsel also for others who might be on similar journeys. Right from the word go, we had committed this word that we felt God had given us to our leaders at our church. So we immediately made ourselves accountable to leaders at the church. And I feel that is so important because, you know, none of us are called. God doesn't call us in isolation. God always, I believe, calls us in and through and with community. And the church is the vehicle that God has chosen for that community. And so we committed these words to our leaders, and they wisely prayed and held it and weighed it and guided us through this journey. So it wasn't just us going off, you know, all bonkers and firing crackers and going, where do we go, what have you. It sounds like that, but it was a process of over 2 years where we were counseled, where we prayed, where there were various prophetic words given to us, scriptures, etc. And it was through the leading of the Holy Spirit all the time, through people, through the word, through our hearts, ministering to us, and through leadership, wise counsel. And so one of the wise counsel that we received was that if you feel it is going to be Muizenberg, and the Lord has spoken there, then it would be good to find and research churches, local churches, because that would be a good place to start and go. And where God said, go and volunteer and serve me full time, or go and serve me full time and volunteer for 1 year. Go and do that at a local church, because that will be a safe place to go, serve through the local church. And we Googled churches, and we found the church, Bay Community Church. It's now changed its name since, Bay City Church now. And we literally just wrote our testimony to the eldership of the church, and we sent it to the lead elder at that time, was Jeff Kidwell. Mm-hmm. And he received this letter. And it's interesting, again, just how the Holy Spirit leads these things, because Jeff later on told us that because the church is based in Cape Town, and Cape Town is a very sought after global destination, so they do get quite a lot of requests from young Christians who want to go on mission. And Cape Town offers so much more than just a place of mission. There's a good case for mission because the need is so great. But then you also have the the benefit of Cape Town and all its beauty and everything and the adventure of Africa. So you know, he gets loads of these requests, and he normally doesn't pay much attention to them. He said to us, but when he found this letter, he felt the Holy Spirit said, "This is one you need to read."
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and he read our letter in detail, and it just so happened that his son, Sheldon Kidwell, who was also on the eldership and the worship leader at the church at the time, was heading to the UK in about a month's time, to meet with some churches out there, and so there was a great opportunity for us to just hop, and it was literally 45 minutes drive from us. We were in Grays in Essex. He was going to Tunbridge Wells in Kent, and it was just across the Dartford, over the QE2 bridge, you know, over the Thames, and we were there. So we had a breakfast with him there a month later. And that's kind of what happened in that breakfast, in that hour and a half that we were together, was as we now look back, often Sheldon and I will sit back and reminiscent about that breakfast encounter we had. I mean, two guys from the, you know, we don't know each other from a bar of soap, and he's meeting me and Iona, and he's like, who are these guys? And we're like, who are these guys? But God did something in our hearts. He fused hearts together, so much so that Sheldon felt that that evening, before he went to bed, he had he was staying with friends, and there was a puzzle piece curtain in the kids' room. And as he went to bed, he felt God say to him before our breakfast, "This is another piece of the puzzle." And as we sat together, there was just this connection between us, you know, and we felt it is the right place, and he felt it's the right place. And a year later, when we arrived at the church for the first time physically at the venue, we realized that the church was right next to the house which we had bought.
Serious? But that's God.
Literally, not within the vicinity. Like the house was next to the complex that we lived in for 3 years, literally next door to each other. So, you know, those sort of confirmations just made, that's when I say with ease, not that it's easy in the sense of everything's la-di-da, everything's roses, but with ease, God confirms, because when God calls, then it's God's plans, it's God's purposes. So it's a divine plan. He's going to lead us, and if we come with simple obedience, and I really stress that word, simple obedience, childlike obedience, you know, not that my children are very obedient right now, but you know, that childlike faith, let's call it childlike faith, you know, but simple obedience, not complicating, you know. I always like to think God is very complex, but God is not complicated. You know, God is complex.
I think we overcomplicate him. When he calls you, like you say, it's a call, and he will open the door, and he says he makes that path straight for us.
Absolutely right. And that's how we felt God was doing for us. And that's how we ended up at the Bay, with a heart to just serve. We didn't have any agenda. We said to them, we're coming, this is our background. Iona had studied in the UK, went to study again, and this time studied her passion. The first time round to the tourism, the second time round the church had sent her to do an honors degree in youth and community work with applied theology. So she found her passion as a youth pastor. And the church was such a beautiful, still in relationship with us today. One of our longest supporter of the Sozo Foundation and our ministry, still today, and good friends of ours, you know. They felt God say that this is a couple you need to invest into. You're not going to have them forever, but the kingdom, there are works in the kingdom prepared for them in advance to go and do.
So the Sozo Foundation, for those people who are listening and watching, who don't know what it is, how would you describe what the Sozo Foundation is?
Yeah, today what the Sozo Foundation is a youth development a non-profit organization. So it started again simply by us setting up a youth group at the church, and the church, the Bay City Church, is geographically based across the road from a township community. In South Africa, township community would be similar to maybe referred to as a shanty town, or a place where people live in high density living conditions with shacks, etc. around. It's less than a square mile community. This community called Vrygrond, which is an Afrikaans word, which literally translated in English means free ground. Profoundly, it's a place where freedom does not reign. You've got 45,000 people living in 1 square kilometer. So highly dense, populated area, high levels of crime, gangsterism, drug abuse, addiction, violence, sexual abuse, unemployment rate of 65 to 70%. So a really challenging community and very underserviced community with very little services. No high school, no clinic, no police station, etc. No community hall, etc. Just basic things. There's nothing. All of the services that are existing are provided by non-profits and NGOs in the community. And we started this youth group just across the road. And God gave us the word Sozo, youth, to call it Sozo Youth, because we felt that was the heart that God had for these young people in this community, to literally be sozoed, which is the Greek word where ultimately we get the word save or salvation from. But it's a word that is referred to in New Testament in many different ways. Jesus uses the word himself when he cast out the demons from the man with legions, and he was sozoed. So he was set free, he was made whole, he was made from brokenness to healing, from captivity to freedom. It's a healing word that is not just a physical healing, but it's a healing of the whole person, body, soul, mind, spirit. And ultimately that's what salvation brings, you know. And so we felt that's what God had for his heart for these young people, was to be sozoed. And so we started with this youth ministry group on a Friday, which quickly grew to about 150, 170 young people coming on a Friday night from this township, young gangsters in between and everything. It was quite crazy. But the grace of God was on it, and there was order, and there was grace, and there was love in the house, you know, unconditional love.
How long ago was this, Anton? When did this?
So that was in 2010 when we started the youth group. And about a year later, by 2011, we had started to engage with the community and going into the community through the relationships we established with these young people and their families. And that's when we discovered the dreadful circumstances that people were living in this community. And we ourselves felt, Ilana and I felt deeply challenged that as youth pastors, how can we only be concerned about the spiritual well-being of young people if we're not going to look at every other part of the young person? You know, to coin a phrase or a word, the holistic person, you know. Young people were failing their grades, dropping out of school. They were stuck in cycles of neglect, abuse, poverty, etc. And it was just seen that was the norm, you know. And so many of these young people were growing up with this 1 square kilometer as the world. And it's almost a walled city without walls, an invisible wall surrounding this community that this is my lot, this is my future, and this is just the way it is. And so these cycles develop within these communities, you know, perpetual cycles of one generation to another generation. And we felt God wanted to come and be the great interrupter. Jesus wanted to interrupt those cycles and break down those cycles. And to do it, we would have to do more than simply look after the spiritual well-being of young people. We had to be able to show them the hope of Jesus, not just tell them about the hope. And we felt God say to us clearly that he wants us to go and be the gospel in Vrygrond and not go and preach the gospel, which, 10 years later in 2011, when we started the Sozo Foundation, which we started out of the Bay, again with the Bay eldership and leadership commissioning us to be the launching pad for this ministry, a response of the church into the community. We felt God say, go and be the gospel. It's much easier, I think, to go and preach the gospel, especially in these sort of communities where you have a lot of religion. Historically, people receive the gospel, with open arms. They're not offended by it. And most of them have heard it before. But what they've never experienced is the unconditional love of Jesus. They've never seen it in practice. Many of them have never experienced it. They've heard it, but they've never experienced it. So they're caught up in religion. And also there's a lot of, because it's such a multicultural community, there's a lot of witchcraft in the community as well. So it's a spiritually dark place. It's not just a place of physical poverty.
When I went there, I actually went, driving to the Sozo Foundation, when we were looking at all the shanty town where they were living. It's not the kind of place you walk down in the middle of the night or even in the day.
Daytime, yes.
The difference between stepping into where you have the Sozo Foundation now and outside that perimeter, the difference was mind-blowing for me, because you're walking in to a community of love, and you can feel when you walk in there, you just have this overwhelming sense of love. Your love for them and vice versa, their love for you.
Absolutely.
And unity, community, and so much, the smiles on their faces, the opportunities you were getting. So when Jeff and myself left, we were like, what did we just experience in there? Because it's like heaven on earth. You've created a safe place for these children to grow and change their community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we felt God has been doing. It started very, 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 very small. We started with what we had, which was ourselves. The church offered us the resource of space, and then we ended up. God opened the door for us in the community, in the local community library, where we started to simply help young people with homework after school, giving them sandwich and a cup of drink and love. And that's how we started our education program, which today is quite different and much further developed. But it started with that. We weren't community development experts. We weren't skilled and trained in the art of social development. But we had a heart we had experienced the unconditional love of Jesus that has been transforming us, and we believe that transformed people transform people. So we connected with young people. We developed the programs from a place of personal contact and personal experience, and so from a small library, it led to one steel container, shipping container, led to 2 shipping containers, 3 shipping containers. 2 of us became 4, became 8, became 16. And God then, miraculously poured out finances for us to to start the dream of building a youth center, a purpose-built youth skills and education center in the heart of the community. The community, we had grown in favor with the community over the years. They had offered us land in the community for free where we could establish our center. And we started to self-build and self-project manage a center that would be a center of transformation. And so 10 years, in March next year, we'll be going for 10 years. And what we have today is we've got an organization that is a employer of 40 staff members. 80% of those staff members are from this community. I'm so blessed to be able to say that throughout the whole of the COVID crisis and pandemic, we've been able to pay every staff member their salaries. We've not had to lay off any staff members. So we're really, really grateful for that. We've been able, services we provide, we have 40 staff members. We have an after-school education program for 100 young people who go to various high schools, come every day, 6 days a week to us. We feed them. We provide life skills to them. We provide social workers to work with them and their families. And then we engage with them through tutors and mentorship in their academic development and journey for 5 years. So the simple model is we want to keep young people in high school, journey with them for 5 years, make sure they complete their senior certificate, and then help them to the next level of further education which could lead to a dignified job. The second prong of what we do is a skills development program, which now works with young people who have dropped out and fallen out of the formal education system, those who have become hopeless, who have given up on their dreams, those who will end up as become fodder for the gangsters, those who maybe a girl who became pregnant at a young age and now she's given up on her life and her dreams. And so these young people get stuck in those cycles. And so we offer them an opportunity to come with us on a 1-year program where we provide, again, social work, psychosocial interventions, life skills, social skills, emotional intelligence development, etc. And then also, very importantly, we provide practical skills, artisanal skills, which are very crucial for South Africa, especially where you have the biggest sector of our population is youth between the ages of 15 and 25, and that sector of population has an unemployment rate of 68%.
That's very high. So in the world, that would be one of the highest.
One of the highest in the world in terms of youth unemployment, yeah. And it's a shocker because this is the next generation. So we've got a generation of young people who are unemployed, uneducated, and they're going to be the fathers and mothers and the next generation. So we have to engage in practical skills because a lot of them don't have, it's not enough to just say everybody needs to stay in school, go to school, or go to university.
It's not for everybody. So when you say practical skills, we're talking about the baristas, the bakery, that's, which is
amazing. Yeah, so we've got a coffee school for baristas, we've got a baking school, we've got a hair and beauty school, we've got a construction school, a graphic design school, and then we've got a general education diploma school, which are for young people who've dropped out of formal education who wants to have another stab at trying to get a matric equivalent, which is the senior certificate in South Africa. So it's an online a self-study based program which they do on site with us and a teacher.
Fascinating. So what were the main challenges for you as a leader, just creating what you've created with the Sozo Foundation?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest challenges that you often, I think everyone who engages with these sort of communities face is you've got to stay in your lane. You've got to find out what is it that God is calling you to do and what is it that he's not calling you to do, and to discern the difference between those two, because you could get so easily sucked into all the needs, because it's a bottomless pit. There's no end to the need. And so anything you do will be a good thing. Anything you do will be a good thing. The question is it a God thing? Is it a God thing for me, for us? And so to stay true to our vision and our calling, that's probably been one of the biggest challenges, you know, to learn how to say no without, while still retaining people's dignity. That's been a real challenge, you know, to build a relationship and trust in a community, a very volatile community that can erupt any day with riots and protests and go. We've had lockdowns way before we've had coronavirus. You know, we've had numerous lockdowns in our community, you know, which are violent lockdowns. So it is a challenge in that as well. Is the challenge, what do you do when you are faced with some of these atrocities yourself? You know, in 2015, I was mugged and assaulted by 4 young gangsters on the streets of the community, which was a very scary and traumatic experience for me, for us. You know, when you have 4 young guys all fueled on the local drug of choice, which is tik, which is like crystal meth, it's very scary, and things could go, you know, south very quickly. And you have to ask yourself the tough question. At that time, we had 9-month-old twins, you know, and ask myself, they need a father. I'm here to help the fatherless, but I don't want to create another set of fatherless children.
That balance you have.
Oh, it's a huge challenge to ask ourselves the question, the real question: is this worth it? You know, it really is a challenge, a question that we often have to come around. And in those moments when we ask this question, I've discovered something about the silence of God. You know, that you know, God's being silent is not God not answering, it's God speaking. Sometimes it's God speaking the loudest.
Yep.
You know,
God is in the silence. We're not very good at sitting and listening and being still and listening to what he says. And he is in the silence.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Absolutely, yeah.
We'd be very interested, Anton, in your advice for people watching who would like to start a similar venture organization, and when it comes to like leadership qualities and how they would go forward based on what you've learned.
Yeah. Sure. Based on what I've learned, the first thing that I would say is that you cannot give out what you don't receive yourself. And I say this with all seriousness and all having experienced the consequence of not making sure that you are filled up yourself, that you are emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, physically healthy, as a leader. You know, in all aspects, you have to holistically look after yourself first and foremost. You know, we have to receive our daily portion first and foremost. We have to set clear boundaries around us. We have to be disciplined with those boundaries. In about a year after I had my assault experience, and a number of riots and protests in between, and the building of the building and everything in between, and the stress and the drama all related to all of those sort of things, I had suffered a nervous breakdown in 2016, and I was hospitalized for 3 weeks, and as a result was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety disorder. And I can tell you that it's been 4 years of incredible recovery journey. God's been so faithful, and God met me, you know, right in the deep, deep, dark pit of depression. You know, I never grew up with any mental health, even notion of understanding of mental health at all, because it's not something that was operating in my world at all. And here I was, suddenly somebody who is, you know, just completely disabled, disenabled through this illness, and because of experiences, because of trauma and constant stress, and not operating in a balanced lifestyle, you know. And so my advice would be, if you're going to go into this sort of ministry, that you will be exposed to trauma on a daily basis, you know. So it's really important to look after our own wellness, to make sure that we have regular sessions where we have accountability partners with who we can process what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we experience, what we are exposed to. You know, when you're going after helping the lost, the broken, the prisoners, the captive, the vulnerable, you're going to hear about some really nasty stories. You're going to hear about the real wickedness and evil that is prevalent in our world. You're going to be exposed to these stories, and they will affect us. You know, we are not made of steel. You know, they will affect us, and we can hold and maintain our strength for a time, but at some stage, you know, it will become too much. And so, rather than going the route which I had gone, unintentionally, you know, where that final event became, it just, you know, became to breaking point, burnout point, right from the start, put in these good disciplines. There are so many good books that have been written by various authors and leaders in ministry and organizations and churches that are coming out and writing about their experiences and passing on wisdom to the next generation, and saying there is another way, there is a different way. You know, Jesus modeled us what it is to be an emotional healthy leader.
Yeah.
You know, he modeled it. It's in the Gospels. You look at his rhythms, you look at his, you know, the way that he went about things, the way that he retreated regularly from the crowds, the way that he sought solace regularly, the way that he sought time alone in prayer with his Father, time in prayer with his disciples, you know, the way he took time to sit down and eat meals and relax and have fun, and, you know, the way he regularly made sure he was outside walking and being healthy, and, you know, his life of handling and holding tension, how he held tension so lightly, how he constantly had his eye focused on the Father, you know, how he had clarity about his calling, his vision, his purpose. So there is a great model in Scripture, and clever people have gone and have suffered, but the God is using their suffering now for a great purpose, where they've produced some fantastic books that can be found, written by people, in terms of being an emotionally healthy leader. And that will be my biggest advice to anybody. You know, the practical things, they're secondary to this. This is the most important thing, because if God's calling somebody to go and serve others, without people, God cannot serve people. He uses people, he chooses people. And so we have to love others in the same way we love ourselves. And often we don't do the self part very well.
That's a really good point, because, you know, you said you love the Lord God with all your heart and with all your soul. Second commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. And if you don't love yourself, then it's very difficult to, you can't even think out of the box on that one.
Absolutely.
I like what you said about the boundaries, because I think a lot of people think that you have to say yes to everything, and you can't. God has given you a mission. He's given you a mission with what you're doing with the Sozo Foundation, and you know, that mission is a straight line that He's already sorted out, and people will be saying, well, can you do this, can you do that, and then you dilute everything because you're saying yes to everything.
Absolutely.
When you were talking, I just felt you're very focused on your vision, your goals, and how important that is in leadership, and that you've got from A to B, and obviously it's a daily surrendering of your will to God that this is the right way. He's obviously, what he's doing with you and the Sozo Foundation is rather amazing within that community. We both, Jeff and myself, were very overwhelmed by what you had done and what you can do in the future. I think it's going to get a lot bigger than you think. we were just very, 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 and the youngsters, just the smiles and the love that you felt from them and what you were doing. But there will be people watching who would like to know more about the Sozo Foundation and maybe would like to donate or help in some way. What is the best way of connecting with you and the foundation?
Yeah, our website is our main portal, so they can find us at www.thesozofoundation.org.za, and then also follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, LinkedIn, and stay up to date with what's going on and what's happening in the community. We've got a fantastic COVID-19 response, six initiative response that's ongoing at the moment. So if people do want to help at the moment, although our center has had to shut down for 3 months, and we've partially opened at 50% capacity, in part due to COVID regulations. We have been very active during COVID. It's been one of our busiest times in providing service delivery to our young people and families in the community. So we've been providing food hampers to families. We've been feeding thousands of families, of people, hundreds of families and thousands of people in the community during this time through a joint venture with ourselves, with the Bay City Church and Siakula, another NGO birthed out of the church. We've been providing hygiene packs to our young people, because when economic crisis strikes, the first thing to go is the non-essentials, and those are things like hygiene. Food becomes the most essential. So we provide hygiene packs, especially hygiene packs for girls as well, with sanitary products. During this time, we've been providing monthly hygiene packs to boys and girls, soap, shampoos, toothpaste, all those basic needs. We've been providing. We've developed a with a pharmaceutical company. We developed a multivitamin for our young people, which is a all-in-one a multivitamin supplement that will help develop and strengthen the immune systems during this winter season, because it is winter season in South Africa right now, which is the season for colds and flus and all the other ailments that are around. And on top of that, the challenge of COVID. COVID is in our community. It has hit our community. A number of our students and their families have been affected. We've had some staff affected. We've sadly lost a co-founder of another partner organization in the community recently to COVID. So it is a real threat, and it is a real challenge. So we want to do whatever we can to strengthen the immune system by providing nutritional meals, providing good health and hygiene, and providing them with multivitamins. We're also providing psychosocial support, because once again, we mustn't underestimate the effects that COVID has had and will have on the mental health and well-being of people in these communities. Being in lockdown in a 3-bedroom house for myself is such a privileged position to be in. But being locked down in a 5x5 shack with 7 people living in one room is not a very nice experience, especially if in a compound there's often a drug addict or a gangster or an oppressor of some sort. There's an abuser within the vicinity of the compound, and this is why South Africa's cases of domestic violence, of gender-based violence, of child sexual abuse have skyrocketed during this COVID pandemic. So there's another pandemic or another crisis that we are facing, and that is the psychosocial needs. And so we've raising funds to employ a psychosocial trauma counselor, a qualified social worker that can start. We're hoping to appoint that person by the 1st of September, who can start working just with our young people who have already disclosed to us numerous cases of violence and abuse that they've been, exposed to during this time. So those are some of the initiatives that we've been doing, and people can support that by just going on our website, clicking on the links, and they can support from anywhere in the world towards those cases.
It's important for people to realise that, that there are a lot of countries that are battling with COVID, but it's all the offshoots of COVID.
Yeah.
You don't realise every single country will be slightly different.
That's right.
Depending on its infrastructure and what is already there. So when you were talking, I just really felt that, God has actually created opportunities for you to actually go into areas you wouldn't necessarily go into. You're actually it sounds like you're probably even more active than you were before, just trying to help those who are lost and broken and lonely and get in there. I mean, you guys are such a blessing for what you're doing, and a great example for people all around the world, just to say, we can sit and we can pray, but I like what you said about be the gospel, because action speaks louder than words. That saying wasn't just said for the sake of it. Words are important, but love can be shown through what you do. And when you do something, it's your time. So you're spending the gift of life, the gift of time, to actually go and spend that with people and help them and grow them in the community. So I think it's going to be really interesting just to see what happens with the Sozo Foundation. I'm so looking forward to coming to visit. I think we're planning next year, God willing, that will happen. And, to see you guys again and, pop into Bay City Church or Bay Community?
Bay City Church, yes. Bay City now, yes.
Now Bay City.
That's right,
just
yes.
Very special meeting you guys there, and very. So,
lovely.
Anton, we'd just like to say thank you. It's just been a real insight into who you are, why, how, and when the Sozo Foundation started. And I think it's good for all of us to understand this thing you said about discipline and balance, having the connection with Jesus, and to actually walk with him and to walk in your calling and not to walk in anyone else's calling. We're all different, we're all unique. And obviously got you guys focused and going in the right direction, which is a real blessing. So just thank you for this time, and we wish you all the best. We'll be praying for you. It's difficult for everybody around the world, and God is shaking the world, but at the same time he's laying out many opportunities for all of us to reach the lost and the broken. And it's time of refocusing and looking up and seeing what he has for us. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording and then we can have a chat.